Know your Lord. We learn about his names and his attributes. Know your Lord. What he approves and disapproves. Know your Lord. Believe in all things that he has brought forth. Know his oneness, Lord.
Know Your Lord, part of the Right Belief series by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid, right here on Sunnahfollowers. Being taught by Ustada Layla Nashiba as she lays down the foundations to get you together. Learn about your Lord. Know your Lord. Streaming on all major platforms. Channel Sunnahfollowers. Assalamu alaikum. Get to know your Lord. First part of the Right Belief series by Sheikh Kareem Abu Zaid. This dynamic literary work of art's main goal is to revive an understanding the names and attributes of Allah. And understanding the name and attributes of Allah will elevate our faith, strengthen us, and keep us steadfast. This wonderful book is now available in an audiobook format and can be found free of charge on YouTube, channel Kareem Abu Zaid. Get to know your Lord. You have nothing to lose.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't know. Okay, Ina alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. I'd like to welcome everybody to our Aqidah class. And before we begin our class, I just want to let everyone know that at 9 o'clock tonight, we have Dr. Ali joining. And Dr. Ali is going to speak to you guys about a new entertainment service that he's put together for you and your family. So you want to make sure that you're here at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for his announcement. Okay, and also before I get started, please, guys, I did check our account today because I told you guys I hadn't been checking because I've been tied up with other stuff going on here. We are $300 overdrawn, and this is the end of the month. What happened was I don't know why, but yes, I do. I forgot those two. But anyway, guys, we're $300 overdrawn in our account. So please, get us out the hole. And also remember that when the first comes, we're going to need $300 more to pay for the server and stuff. So we're calling out to please donate to support this dawah effort. I wasn't checking our account to see how we were all week because I was busy dealing with other issues. But subhanAllah, yes, I figured we would be overdrawn, and we are by $300. So please support us. Please donate tonight. You can use Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, please. And I'm gonna keep the banner going all night because we got to get out that hole. And it's $30 a day for what they charge when you're overdrawn. Because I looked at it, it's $30 a day. So that means it's gonna be more than 300. It's gonna keep adding up each day. So please, guys, donate and look at the rewards you'll get for keeping this website on the internet. Subhanallah. And so with that said, let's get started on the class for tonight. I'm not going to be too long tonight because my mother has just had surgery. That's what I've been dealing with all week. So, and I got to keep my phone here in case, I get a call from one of them. All right. So for this class, we've been discussing how if your belief system is not correct, if we do not believe in the lordship of Allah, then nothing else matters. And we've been speaking about how, unfortunately, this nation has deviated into so many sets and groups. Here in America, most of the Muslims are murjia. If I were to go around and do a take a censor of all the Muslims here in America, you would find that the majority of them are in the murjia set, which is one of the Sufi sets, the Mu'tazila set. All of them are the same. Yeah, just bit different sets, you know. And what makes them fall in that category, you can look and see how we're reacting about this war that's going on. The way that the Muslims around the world, period, are reacting shows that most of the Muslims around the world fall in that group. Okay. But I'm concerned with American Muslims. You know, they can't handle the fact that we're protesting against the Qadr of Allah. Protesting is haram. Protesting like like you Muslims are doing, like the Kafirs do, with signs and all of that stuff. All you're doing is protesting against the decree of Allah. This is haram, you know, and we Muslims have become just like the non-believers. We act like them. We live like them. We fight like them. You fight just like them. Okay. You fight against the law like they do. So all of this boycotting and all this protesting and all this putting your trust in the hands of a non-Muslim, putting your trust in the hands of man instead of Allah, it just further proves that the majority of the Muslims do not believe in the lordship of Allah. And the aspect of Allah's lordship that we struggle with is the aspect that the Prophet said we would struggle with. Remember the hadith, whereas the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said every nation of people have their fire worshipers. The fire worshipers of my nation are those who claim to be Muslim, but they don't believe in the Qadr of Allah. And he said, you're going to find that most Muslims are not believers. They're not Muslims because they don't believe in the Qadr of Allah. They don't believe that Allah is the creator of all things. They don't believe that Allah has knowledge of all things. They don't believe that Allah, that nothing will happen unless Allah wills it. That's all the different categories of the lordship of Allah. And we can see that Muslims are struggling with that today. Okay, we don't believe that the war was brought here by Allah. We don't believe that that Allah can stop it if he wants. We don't believe that we did anything to bring it on. So today what I'm going to do is focus on the history, because again, you have to know the history of this religion to understand these hadiths and to understand the verses of the Quran. So today we're going to be covering, and let me put the PowerPoint up on the screen. Tonight, we're going to be covering pages 135 through 138, which is finishing up this chapter in the adult book. In the children's book, where it's still this whole chapter, pages 231 through 241 in the children's book. And today, hopefully, you guys will see, how this deviation in the belief in Allah's names and attributes, because that's what it boils down to. Allah is the creator. That's one of his names. He's the creator of everything, good and evil. He's the creator of sickness. He's the creator of war. He's the creator of disease. This is what the Muslims don't believe today, the Murjia and Sufi groups and stuff. These protesters, they don't believe that. They don't believe that Allah creates war. They don't believe that Allah creates disease. That's why they didn't take the COVID shot. They don't believe that Allah creates sickness. That's why they don't go to the doctor. Okay, you messed up. You got to change that way of thinking. Okay, so we're going to speak about the historical evolution of ilhad, which is deviation, in the names of Allah. He's the creator, his knowledge of everything. They don't believe that Allah knows what man's going to do. They don't believe that Allah knew that this war would happen. They don't believe that Allah knows when it's going to stop. I even got people asking me, is Allah speaking the truth when he says the things he says? Astaghfirullah. So we're going to speak about the evolution of deviation in the names and attributes of Allah. And again, we have to emphasize that predestination, that's one of the tenets of faith. We believe in Allah. We believe in all his books, all his angels. We believe in paradise, hell, and everything he's told us about them. And we also believe that nothing happens unless Allah wills it. That's predestination, known in Arabic as al-Qadr. And al-Qadr is associated with the names and attributes of Allah. And we talked about how when we speak about predestination, which is al-Qadr, it consists of 4 categories: Allah's knowledge, his will, his writing, and the creation. Okay? To deny any of that is denying the decree of Allah and invalidating your belief in Allah. And that's why the world is as it is today. So, according to Muslim historians, the first Muslim to deny the decree of Allah was an Iraqi convert. Remember, Mukhtar's teaching you guys the history of Islam. You guys are learning about how, under the caliphate of Abu Bakr, how Abu Bakr sent Khalid bin Walid, also Abu Ubaidah, Dirar, and others to fight against the Romans, because the Romans had heard about how the Muslims had defeated the Persians and the Romans. You know, Heraclius wanted to put an end to the Muslims, the Arabs, for once and for all. So we talked about how in Mukhtar's class, how Khalid bin Walid led the army in the attacks against the Romans. The Muslims took over Basra. They ended up taking over Syria, defeating the Roman Empire, and then the Romans converted to Islam. Well, there was an Iraqi convert who used to be a Christian. His name was Abu Yunus. But remember, the Christians, they deny predestination. They don't believe in the Qadr of Allah. And the reason why they deny it is because of the Hellenic influences of the European philosophers. You know, the Christians have mixed Greek mythology, you know, Homer, Aristotle. They've allowed all this stuff to destroy the Christianity. So Christianity denies the Qadr of Allah. So when Abu Yunus converted to Islam, he didn't believe in that. He could not grasp this idea of Allah having knowledge of all things, that nothing bad happens or good unless he wills it. He couldn't understand the fact that Allah created us and he created even our actions. So what happened was he ended up apostating. He ended up going back to Christianity. But before he apostated and went back to being a Christian, he had a student named Mabad ibn Khalid al-Juhani, who was from Basra. And so even though Mabad's teacher apostated and went back to Christianity, Mabad continued to spread this teachings of his master, who could not get a grasp on Allah having knowledge of everything, and Allah being the creator of everything good and evil. And we talked about how Mabad had a big following because remember, the Romans were Christian. And just like with any new ideology, people convert to it and they always bring their baggage from their past ideology to it. That's what the Vikings did. When the Vikings converted to Christianity, they brought their worship of the evergreen tree into it. They also brought their worship of cloths into it. That's how they got Christmas. Christmas wasn't a part of Christianity. But this is what happens when people adopt or convert to new ideologies. Oftentimes, they like to bring their old ways into it. Well, a lot of people had converted to Islam and adopted the way of thinking that Mabad and his teacher had. So we talked about how during that time, we had Ibn Umar and a few other companions. They were living in Medina. Medina was the headquarters of Islam. The original companions stayed in Medina as Mukhtar was teaching. They didn't, Abu Bakr kept them close. Umar kept them close. They, during the first 4 caliphs, they stayed in Medina, the originals, because they were the teachers. They were the scholars, the people to guide and spread the dawah to the others, the correct dawah. So anyway, some of Mabad's students went to make Hajj and they saw Ibn Umar. And that's when they approached Ibn Umar and they said, Ibn Umar, we're from Basra, and Mabad and our teachers are teaching us that Allah is not the creator of everything, nor does he have knowledge of everything. Man makes his own decisions and man makes his own actions. This is the thought of, it's called free will. Free will. The Christians believe that the free will is that man freely makes his own actions and Allah is not aware of them. So when they explained this to Ibn Umar, he said, this is a sacrilege. That's not Islam. He said, the Prophet Muhammad didn't come with that garbage. He said, that's some Christian garbage. He said, any of you who believe that nonsense, any of you who follow that belief system, you're not a Muslim. You're not one of us. And so what happened was these men ended up going back to Basra, but guess what? Islam continued to spread, and Mabad and his followers continued to teach this broken down concept of known as free will, which today Muslims today teach. The Sufis follow that belief today, different sets of them. The Murji'a follow that belief today. When Mabad died, Ibn Umar and all the original companions that were living at that time, they said he's not a Muslim. They told the people, do not attend his funeral, because the simple fact that he denied the decree of Allah, that Allah is the creator of everything, and that Allah has knowledge of everything, and that nothing happens unless Allah wills it, he's not a Muslim, so don't attend his funeral. So that goes to show, guys, how many of Muslims are there today? There's a lot of people that use the title that call themselves Muslims, but if you're denying the actions of Allah's lordship, you're protesting against his decree, like a lot of y'all are doing. You don't understand that he made war. Allah made this war happen, not the Zionists. Allah created the COVID, not some twisted scientist. Allah creates, Allah wills. If you don't believe that, Muslims, I'm sorry. If Ibn Umar and them were living today, they say the same thing about y'all. Y'all ain't Muslim. And if you die, don't nobody attend your funerals, because that is not Islam. That's why I tell you guys, we have to check our aqidah, because a lot of us, when we die in kafir and don't even know it. You can't play with those articles of belief. You can't play with that. You have to believe in Allah's lordship, guys, all aspects of it. Tawheed ar-Rububiyah. Y'all got to stop listening to these famous Sufi speakers in America who are telling y'all all kind of garbage. And then when you die, guess what? The angels snatch your soul and say, you wasn't no Muslim. You didn't understand. And you didn't believe that war comes from Allah, that disease comes from Allah, that sickness comes from Allah. Allah said when you get sick, he always sends a treatment. Take the treatment. But look, right. So, okay, so this is the first instant of deviation. And as you guys can see, to this day, we still have Muslims that follow this stuff. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Also, guys, as Islam continued to spread because of the wars, and we're going to cover it during the Caliphate of Umar, the Caliphate of Uthman. It was during the Caliphate of Uthman, guys, that the religion spread throughout North Africa, okay, and Spain and all of that. And as the Islam continued to spread, the philosophical innovators of free will, this is called the Christian doctrine. The Christian doctrine of free will continued to find new supporters. And again, that indoctrination entails denying that Allah has knowledge of what he created. In other words, Allah didn't know that Israel was going to make their attack against the Muslims. Allah didn't know that the Hamas was going to start it off with their instigated by doing what they do. So the Christians deny this. You know, and this continued to spread as Islam continued to spread. And then we have a man named Galen ibn Muslim from Damascus, from out of Syria. He was one of the students of Mabad. He really traveled around, twisting belief in the qadr of Allah around into the Christian indoctrination of free will, until Umar's grandson, and we're going to cover his caliph too at this website, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. He was the fifth caliph. He had this man Galen brought before him, and also had him executed. He had him executed. So that, again, that shows that what a horrific sin this is, because again, this brings about death. This is the same as denying that Allah even exists. Okay, and this continued on with another man named Jaham ibn Safwan. He continued on until he was executed by Nasir ibn Sayyar in the 7th century. So as you can see, this continued on to what it is today. And what are the three elements that contributed to the spread of these corrupt beliefs? What made it happen? Well, number one, the companions died out. The original companions died. And so did the ones after them and the ones after them. Remember, guys, the Prophet Muhammad said each generation of people will be further and further and further away from the true Islam. So as the companions and their students students died off, it continued to become even worse. And also remember, the best of the Muslims were the first four caliphs, and also Ibn Umar, Umar's grandson, Abdul Aziz. After his death, the rest of the caliphs were not about nothing, guys. We had a bunch of corrupt rulers. The early generation of Muslims, they resisted innovation. They wouldn't allow it. Anyone that distorted the original teachings of the Quran or the Sunnah, they would execute them. Okay? But this didn't happen after they died off. After they died off, the later generations that came, the leaders after those original four caliphs, they supported and encouraged research into philosophy, just like what we have today. I call them the PhD brothers. We have these PhD Muslim brothers that y'all like to follow here. They all got PhDs in Islam when there is no such thing as a PhD in Islam, because again, hikmah comes from Allah, not from man. But, you know, as man becomes educated in worldly things, man thinks himself superior. So that's what happened. The leaders began to encourage research into philosophy, psychology, and all that crap. And then they would do just what they're doing today. They would tweak the Sunnah, tweak the Quran. We're not going to follow this aspect of the religion. We're going to change this around. The same thing that's happening today. And that's why I'm always telling you guys, history repeats itself. History does nothing but repeats itself. So that's how our traditional Islam became distorted. Okay? Corrupt leaders. Also, another element that contributed to the destruction, you know, of the correct belief system is decentralization. As Islam spread, no longer was Medina the home or the capital of Islam. Medina is where you could go to find the real scholars, the original companions and their students and their students. But as Islam spread, people there made their countries the seat. You know, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, they made their countries the seat of rule instead of Medina. Okay? So the people of the Sunnah had no choice but to see the original Sunnah become distorted, because one thing that Islam teaches us, guys, even if we have bad leaders, we cannot rebel against them. And this is something that a lot of the Muslim brothers today don't understand. They talk about Saudi Arabia. They talk about the Emirates. They don't understand it's haram for us to rebel against our leaders, especially as long as our leaders are still praying. And these leaders today still pray. Call them what you want to call them, but we can't rebel against them. So all of this added to the destruction of the Sunnah. Remember, guys, the Prophet Muhammad said that one of the first things that will disappear is my Sunnah, my example. Instead of following what I came with, people are going to tweak it, twist it around, incorporate their own ideology in it. Okay? So, and also remember the Persians, the Shiites. That's why I was telling you guys, get out of the politics of the world. The Shiites, they contributed greatly to the defamation of the correct belief system. They were the ones responsible for the murder of Uthman. They were the ones responsible for the murder of Ali. They were every fitna that happened after Umar left. this world. The Shiites had a hand in it. They're instigators because their belief system is so messed up. They believe that they got to start problems to wake up their imam, who they believe is in a cave sleep. Nothing's changed. They always sticking their hands in crap. So the Persians and other groups who were anti-Arab. By the way, Persians are not Arabs. They're Persians. And they've always had dislike for each other. You guys are learning that in Khalid, the class on Khalid bin Walid. The Persians always view the Arabs as being ignorant, uneducated, trifling, poor, raggedy people. The Persians always view themselves to be superior over the Arabs. So all of this political shenanigans added to this corruption of the correct belief system. Okay. Also, as Islam continued to spread, as the original companions and their predecessors died off, people began to abandon. They began to abandon the knowledge, the true knowledge of Islam. People weren't concerned with what did the prophet say about this? What did the prophet do? They were more concerned with, what does Sheikh so-and-so say? What does this famous person here say? Okay. And that's when a lot of innovation came into our religion. The spread of knowledge and the respect for it became lost amongst the Muslims. A lot of people were persecuted and executed as being fanatics. If you did speak out to try to uphold the Sunnah, you were executed or punished. So all of this contributed to our downfall. And this is when the rise of the four imams began. After all the original companions and their predecessors died, that's when the four imams rose up. And mashallah, the four imams and Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Tirmidhi, they began to speak out. They began to speak out against the innovations. They began to speak out against the abandonment of the Sunnah. But look what happened to these men. They were persecuted. All of the four imams were persecuted and punished. Imam Bukhari died a horrific death because they all spoke out against this innovation that had infested the Muslim belief system. Okay. Listen to what Imam Shafi said in regards to the people of innovation. He said, my ruling regarding the people of theological rhetoric is that they should be beaten with palm leaves and shoes and then be paraded amongst the people, with it being announced that this is the reward for the person who abandons the Quran and who abandons the Sunnah of the Prophet and turns to theological rhetoric. That's what Imam Shafi said. And of course, he was punished for that. Listen to what Imam Hanafi said. He said to his son about the people of theological rhetoric, he said, these are people who manipulate and deviate the names and attributes of Allah. They are from amongst those who you will see that they used to be upon one word and one religion until Shaitan came between them. So now you find amongst them hatred and differing. Okay, so Imam Hanafi tried to speak out against it, but of course, people didn't listen to him. He was persecuted too. So the spread of deviation and understanding of the correct belief system is from the loss of the companions. When the original companions and their students died off, there was nobody left to check these people. We've had the four imams. We had people like Ibn Taymiyyah who came after them. Ibn Taymiyyah and his students, Ibn Qayyim and Ibn Qathir and Imam Nawawi and them, they tried to speak out, but look what happened to them. All of them were punished for doing so. So that's why it's important for all of us as Muslims to understand, if your understanding of this religion is not as those original companions, you're upon something else. This is why the Prophet Muhammad said, always check your belief system, especially if you live to see calamities coming from Allah. You live to see war and hurricanes, tornadoes, and murder and killing and homosexuality. Check your belief system, because it means you've deviated so far away from what I came with that Allah is sending his punishment. Again, Islam is only based on two sources, the Quran and the Sunnah. And if there's a question about something, you look to see what those original companions had to say. What did they say about the decree of Allah? What did they say about protesting? Did they protest? What did they say about boycotting? What did they say about women? What did they say about men? If your understanding of this deen is not like theirs, then you're lost. You're upon something different. So that's why we have all these different sets and these different groups today. This is why Allah has sent the war, and the war is not going away. You can continue to disobey him and vote in elections all you want to for kafirs. It's not going to change what Allah has willed.